Hey everyone, thank you for tuning into my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about how to identify narcissists, especially after you've had your spiritual awakening. Just a quick disclaimer, of course I'm not a psychologist, I don't have a degree. I am just somebody who has suffered through narcissistic abuse, and I've just spent countless hours studying it, maybe 300 plus hours. So I just want you to think of this video as more of a comprehensive guide to identifying a narcissist or any other cluster B personality, sociopaths, psychopaths. So yeah, this is just going to be a quick, very simple guidelines on how to identify them. Okay, so first thing first, what is narcissistic personality disorder, NPD? It is, according to the DSM-4, a pervasive pattern of grandiosity in fantasy or behavior, need for admiration, and lack of empathy, beginning by early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts as indicated by 5 or more of the following. Has a grandiose sense of self-importance, is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love, believes that he or she is special and unique, requires excessive admiration, has a sense of entitlement, is interpersonally exploitive, lacks empathy, is envious of others or believes that others are envious of them, and shows arrogant behavior or attitude. So, to clarify, you only need to match 5 of these 9 to be diagnosed by a healthcare professional as having NPD. Now, of course, if you have, let's say, 2 or 3, you may not be diagnosed with NPD, but you can still have a damaging effect on people. Okay, so there are basically 3 different types of narcissists. You have your overt, which are your stereotypical narcissist, your Hollywood movie interpretation. You have covert / inverted, which are just more introverted and codependent. I know it sounds a little hard to believe, but a narcissist can be codependent. And then you have malignant, which is just incredibly dangerous. They are a narcissist with antisocial personality traits, so psychopathic traits. So for the overt, they're very loud and, they brag outwardly. They're cunning and manipulative. They often have numerous but shallow relationships. So this will lead to them having also, affairs and multiple sex partners. And it's because of that they have the ability to be very charming and charismatic. So they can make friends with anybody, in the first interaction. They have a lack of empathy, so they're really good at faking it. They're phenomenal actors, but deep down they can't really feel it as we can, that empathy. They have very similar friends. So you might have heard that phrase, you are the average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with, and it is true. It's like they have this radar to find people who are like them, and to find people like us who have been abused as well. So they're opinionated also. When they have a argument, they seek to win from a place of ego and emotion instead of finding the truth. It's always a vertical conversation and never a horizontal conversation. They're controlling. They react to criticism with rage, and there's often a underlying element of shame. So you can never tell a joke about them because they'll always want to get you back. Now, inverted narcissists or covert narcissists, they're typically very shy and fragile. They usually grow up with another narcissist in their family competing or discouraging them. If it's a parent, they'll be groomed by that parent to be the perfect narcissistic supply. And I'll touch a little bit more on that later on. And it's because of that, because they grew up being groomed to be perfect narcissistic supply, they are codependent because they have to be in a relationship with another narcissist. So typically they'll be in a relationship with maybe a malignant or an overt narcissist. And it's because they crave that drama and abuse. That's normal. They grew up with that. To them, that's how life is. They need that adrenaline rush to feel normal again. So sometimes they'll just provoke you just so they can get a response out of you. They're also very passive aggressive. They're, on the surface, they may look a little helpless and innocent. They play the victim role typically. The crocodile tears and all of that. They'll just try and gather sympathy, but they're just as bad. I don't want to say bad, but they know what they're doing. So they'll be nice in public, but abusive and cruel behind closed doors. And often, like the overt, they'll exploit others, but it's more subtle. And it's because they also have the same grandiose fantasies and sense of entitlement on the inside. But because they're, shy, unassertive, and self-critical, they don't show it. They don't have the confidence to show it like the overt. And they're very materialistic. So now going on Malignant, I will post the Hare's Psychopathy checklist, which basically gives you the traits of what you could expect to find in a psychopath. So like I said before, a malignant narcissist is a narcissist with psychopathic-like traits. So some of the more defining features are if they're sadistic. That's one of the big differences. If they enjoy seeing others in pain, hurting them, that is how you could tell if someone is a malignant narcissist. They're also pretty aggressive, much more aggressive than the overt and covert narcissist. They're just as charming and charismatic. You'll also notice that they'll treat people with more status and power with respect, but anybody below them or who they perceive to be below them, they will not treat with respect at all. Typically, they're very successful. They care more about personal achievement than mastery in one's field. If they're high functioning, they can become, your CEOs, executives, politicians, go into, the law field and other high level positions. Typically, there will also be early behavioral problems. You will find a lot of them can or have a past history of being gang affiliated, where they got in trouble a lot at school. And it's really because they're very impulsive people. Another trait of them is that they're very paranoid, and it's that fear of being exposed or embarrassed or whatever. It makes them very kind of paranoid, and you can kind of see it sometimes if you look carefully. And if you're somebody that knows that they're a malignant narcissist, the chances are that they know that you know. They can tell. They're very intuitive as well. They're very criminal minded. They feel like the law doesn't apply to them, so they'll talk on the phone while they drive, they'll speed, they feel like they're above the law. Now, they are dangerous, and when I say they have psychopathic traits, I don't want you to think of the Hollywood stereotype of a psychopath. They could be your next door neighbor. It doesn't have to be somebody that kills people or harms them in a very physical way. That's just the Hollywood stereotype of a psychopath. They are, though, very calculated and ruthless. And in my opinion, I would say from my own experience that they are more aware of the horrible things that they do. Whereas, the covert narcissist may not be as conscious of the harm that they inflict onto others to the same degree. And that's just been in my own personal experience. I also believe that they can be much more dangerous than psychopaths. It's because they're emotionally fueled. So a psychopath may be in a situation where they get embarrassed and they'll be done with it because they don't really care. It doesn't affect them emotionally. But the malignant narcissist, those feelings of anger and revenge, they'll consume them on the inside, and they'll lead them to be impulsive and to react, and that can lead them to doing harmful things. So it can even lead to killing someone. It can, lead to horrible things because they'll be fixated on getting that revenge. Now, these are some things that aren't typically suggested to be traits, but it's just things I noticed. I've noticed that they do blink less often. I don't know if it's anybody else that has noticed it, but it seems very unusual. You have to be very observant to pay attention to that. They also have an expressionless face oftentimes because, like I said, they don't really know how to react in some social situations. So yes, because like I said, they fake it a lot too, like the overt too. They fake the emotions, but the malignant, having some of those psychopathic like traits, they really don't know how to react in some social situations, and they just have this menacing stare that is very terrifying if you ever get a look at it, because it's kind of a look of just evil. I can't think of any other word but that. And like I said, some overlap, so I'm going to cover some traits now that you could find in all three. So they love, all three of them, the overt, the covert, and the malignant, they love to put others down. And it's really just to mask their own internal shame. Like I said, they are envious of others. Oftentimes they'll make a comment that will degrade you, even if it's very subtle. So you have to learn how to read between the lines with these people. I did mention that they can read people very well. They are highly intuitive. And if you're a empath or a very empathetic person, you got to understand that you and the narcissist, as hard as it is to believe, are not very different. You guys are the same coin, just different sides. Both of you were probably, if you're an empath with a narcissistic parent, you and the other narcissist were probably both abused. And so you learned how to read other people's emotions very well. Another trait is that they'll humble brag, right? They'll talk about how generous they are or how kind and nice they are. But of course, anybody that says those things probably cannot be trusted. They all have their own self-serving agenda. It's all about them. It's just me, 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 me. There's the inability to love again because of the lack of empathy. I don't know what it's like to be a narcissist, but I truly cannot imagine what it's like to not feel what it's like to love. It's kind of terrifying because there's so many cute things. There's puppies and babies. I don't know what it's like to not feel love towards that. They also use people as objects and tools. That's all you are to them, nothing more. They will also patronize you, and they'll have this condescending tone. Again, it's because they think they're better than you for the most part. They think they're better than most people. This is also another big thing that isn't talked about a lot. They're bored constantly. There's always the constant need for stimulation. So if you see someone who's always on social media, or that's probably, I think, one of the biggest signs. And most people think a narcissist is somebody that takes a lot of selfies of themselves, but it's so much more than that. It's just social media gives them a platform to get that validation that they crave, that narcissistic supply. This is also something that is kind of not really brought up a lot. I have noticed that they are typically kind of nosy. They try and get information on you. I don't know why. Maybe they're trying to get some dirt on you. I've noticed that, my brother-in-law, who's a malignant narcissist, there's so many times he's snooping around my room, looking at things on my desk. Even one time went through my journal and then lied about it. So they're very, I guess they try to look for dirt on you. black and white thinkers. So these are people that think of a situation or other people or themselves as being all good or all bad. They can't see the gray areas in life. Going back again, they are envious. If there's a quality or trait you possess, and if people compliment you, they'll disguise an aggressive jab at you as a joke. It's it's very childish. They will also typically ask you for favors, but whenever you need them, they're never there, and they are ungrateful for what you do for them. They have a Jekyll and Hyde personality. So, it's very hot and cold. So it amazes me too. My mother is also, she's a narcissist. I grew up with her as well, of course. And it just amazed me growing up how she could sometimes just be yelling and screaming and going crazy, and then suddenly her friend will call in the blink of an eye like that. She's the sweetest person in the world. They have addictions, sex, drugs, alcohol. That's granted for. You could see that. Bad boundaries, and of course a sense of entitlement. So these are some more signs, or I should say terms, that apply specifically to narcissist or any personality disorder. So the first thing we have here is gaslighting, which is manipulating someone by psychological means into questioning their own sanity. So for the narcissist, if you say the sky is blue, they'll tell you how it's orange because blah 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 blah. Or if you say, why are you cheating on me? I have this proof right here, XYZ. They're going to say, I'm not cheating, you're just always jealous and paranoid. So they make you question your own sense of reality. We have projection next, which is projecting undesirable feelings or emotions onto someone else, rather than admitting to or dealing with the unwanted feelings. So if you're dealing with someone who lies and manipulates, they may accuse you of doing that because they're just projecting their own feelings about themselves onto you. Next, we have a smear campaign, which is an effort to destroy someone's reputation. The narcissists are they'll be two-faced. This is also another good way to figure out if someone's a narcissist. If they gossip with you about other people, chances are they're also talking shit about you behind your back. And if they're gossiping about you with like their close friends or people that they care about, and you're not as close, they're gonna talk shit about you behind your back as well. So we have love bombing, which is the practice of overwhelming someone with signs of adoration and attraction. So this is just their superficial charm, and they do something which is called mirroring. So basically they'll take on your belief systems, the phrases you say, they'll mirror who you are so you can like them. If you're somebody that believes in going to church on Sunday, they could be an atheist, but they'll go on church with you on Sunday, so that you can like them. Next, we have triangulation. So that's when one person manipulates a relationship between two parties by controlling communication between them, which is basically playing one person against another. So this is just a personal example from my life. I became friends with one of my friend's ex, and they were together at the time, but when they split up, me and my friend's ex, we got closer because she was a narcissist, so she kind of mirrored back to me. She did the whole love bombing thing to me, and towards the end, before I ended up cutting her out, she was trying to triangulate my friend from me, and because at this point she had already discarded my friend. She didn't care about him at all. And I was still, I was still friends with him, of course. So I remember, like, she sent me a text one day, and or we were talking about something over text, and she said something along the lines of, "Believe it or not, I've noticed you've been distancing yourself from my friend," which wasn't true at all. But first of all, you gotta have some big balls to say something like that, to tell someone how they feel or what they're doing. And I think I said something like, I hadn't really noticed anything like that. And then she said, you'll see what I mean. So that's not the best example, but that's just, you have to listen to your own gut, because I knew that I wasn't, distancing myself from my friend at all. But they're very good at getting you to believe stuff like that. They're very good at gaslighting. So you have to use your own discretion and follow what your own gut says. Of course, next we have pathological liar, or pathological lying, I should say, which is the compulsive urge to lie about matters big and small, regardless of the situation. So they'll lie about anything. Usually it's achievements or anything they can brag about to look good. And of course, narcissistic supply, which I've talked about, it's attention given to the narcissist. Anything that builds up their ego. So I'll go back to my friend, or my former friend, who I was just talking about. One day she was at the airport, and she gave me a call, and she said, "Oh, well, everybody was busy, so I figured I'd call you just to see, how's it going?" And at first, I had to take a step back, so it's kind of like, what? So basically what she kind of was implying was like, "Oh, all of my primary sources of narcissistic supply are busy, and you're my secondary supply, so I'm gonna want that attention from you now because everybody else is busy. So you're my last option." So a primary supply is maybe like that one friend, their close friend, or maybe a partner, and then secondary supply are people who they kind of they keep in the loop, I suppose you could say, just for when, if they may need them for anything, for advice or attention, or just to get anything. According to a post from Edmund Garcia on Quora, his friend, who is a cluster B personality, groups people into 4 categories. 1. Patreon, who is anyone who can help financially, socially, etc. 2. A partner, someone equal and therefore neutral and non-threatening. 3. Predator, that is another sociopath, someone to respect but avoid a confrontation unless it is absolutely necessary. And 4. Prey, someone to feed on, somebody to take advantage of. So what causes narcissistic personality disorder? Typically, it stems from either neglecting parents, domineering parents, or abusive parents. And NPD, all it is a coping method to deal with abuse as a child. So the child feels oppressed and rejected by a parent, so it consciously or unconsciously says that it never wants to feel this way again, so it suppresses the true self. And this is when it creates a false self, a facade, a ego identity. The false self is the one that holds all of the shame and guilt. So the child is only given validation if they conform to the desire of the parent, the narcissistic parent. So if they choose to comply, which is one of the responses that the child can do, really, the child will imitate one or both parents becoming like them. So if the parent's a narcissist, of course, the child will become a narcissist, and they become the perfect narcissistic supply for that parent. The child's internal voice becomes abusive and narcissistic, just like the parent. Then you have the rebel, which is typically the scapegoat or black sheep of the family. They're the ones that challenge the parent and oppose them. In his book, Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited by Sam Vaknin. He says, the false self is a childish response to abuse and drama. Abuse is not limited to sexual molestation or beatings. Smothering, dotting, pampering, overindulgence, treating the child as an extension of the parent, not respecting the child's boundaries, and burdening the child with excessive expectations are also forms of abuse. Okay, so now I will just be touching on some final thoughts I have on the subject. So the first thing I would advise is always just listen to your gut. Your body will intuitively know when someone is a predator. You'll feel that sensation inside of you, and you may have already had this experience before. You know when someone is just a little dark and twisted on the inside. And if you're an empath or highly sensitive person, chances are you will be able to pick up on this energy as well. So for me, myself, I know I get often very sick, and I always just get very, I get headaches, I get nauseous, I just feel so bad when I'm around somebody that is a cluster B personality. So first thing, always listen to your body. Secondly, I would suggest just study their patterns. They're very predictable. After some time, you'll be able to figure out the way that they act, and you can avoid it in the future. So if somebody, for example, they may want that emotional reaction, so they'll provoke you, they'll get that reaction from you, and then they'll play a victim and cry, and it'll be a pattern. It'll happen over and over and over. So now you know that the pattern, once the pattern is established, you can avoid it. Maybe you can set up a plan where you just leave the room, wherever you are. Just leave the house, leave the room, whatever area you're in, get far away from them, and don't even give in. Another thing I'd like to mention is, if you want to find out more about their history, you can just ask their family sometimes. You know, if it's a situation where it's somebody who you're dating, their family will give away information freely about their childhood. And from there you can see any red flags that may come up. Now, if you are watching this and you are a victim, I don't like to use the word victim, but it's okay sometimes. You know, sometimes it is what it is. You have been a victim, but it's not right to stay in that victim conscious mind state. So when you are in that victim conscious mind state, you may look for revenge, and I would highly advise against it. Your feelings, they will eventually fade, and your emotions will come back down. If you do take revenge, if you try to expose them publicly or anything like that, and even if you do succeed, they will spend the rest of their lives looking to get you back. And especially if they're malignant and somewhat intelligent, you'll have to live the rest of your life always looking over your shoulder, and you don't want to be paranoid for the next 15 years. Okay, these people they're wolves in lamb's clothing. Also, the thought of revenge, it only keeps you focused on them instead of working on yourself. Which is all what this is all about, right? It should be yourself and how to improve. I know how frustrating it can be to see how somebody's so terrible and horrible, and how just kind of twisted they are, and nobody else can see it because the mask that they have on is so good. It could be very frustrating. I just know how it can be to just see so clearly and just be frustrated that other people can't as well. People that are being taken advantage of. Another thing to also consider is, if you just want to see them suffer, you know, just always keep in mind consciously that they currently are. They don't like who they are on the inside. Despite their outside appearance, they can look as happy as, you know, the happiest person in the world, but deep down inside, they are in pain. Eventually, the narcissist will always expose themselves. This is just, to me, it's a fact. They cannot keep up the facade for very long. There will be a point where they slip, or they mess up and people kind of start to see beyond it, no matter how good the mask is. It's not the world we live in. We live in a cause and effect world, and if you do horrible, evil things, it will come back to bite you. What has really helped me on this journey is studying Stoicism. Now, Stoicism, I'm not going to get too much into it. Maybe I'll make another video on it. But Stoicism is basically you cannot control what happens to you. You can only control how you react. Or I should say respond. And just, there's so much in there that has helped me to deal with these emotions of frustration, anger, sadness, and helping me see my own patterns. So Marcus Aurelius, who is a famous Stoic philosopher and Roman emperor, he said that the best revenge is simply to not be like that. Seneca, another famous Stoic philosopher, also said that getting angry at someone else is like trying to kick a mule or bite a dog, right? They're just going to get more angry and more vicious right back to you. And there's no sense in fighting fire with fire. Some things that I've learned is that sometimes the right thing to do is nothing. And it's something that I battled with a long time. Because a part of me always felt like I had to do something. And I would always keep saying this quote in my mind: the only necessary triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. But of course, that is the emotional side of me. Once some time passed and I calmed down and thought about it logically, I realized that it's always best to just let things play out as it should. Right? If you do try to expose them publicly, it will not go good. 9 times out of 10. Because, first of all, not only will it lead them to desiring revenge, the people around you that you try to do it publicly, to expose them publicly to, they may not believe you, unless you have some really hard proof. If it's a case of their word against yours, you are going to lose. They will drag you down to the level and they will beat you with experience. Especially if they're charming and charismatic. They can really talk their way out of anything. And people also may see you as the aggressor for starting any sort of confrontation. Not to mention the fact that most people, they don't know anything about NPD. So you're going to look like a crazy person trying to explain it. Most people don't put in the time to learn about these things and how to protect themselves. Going back to how you feel and how you react, if something that they say or do triggers you, that's great. That means that there's something that you need to heal and work on. That they're showing you what needs to be worked on inside of yourself. Okay, if it wasn't true, it really wouldn't bother you. And again, like I said, they really know how to see, they can see your insecurities and they know how to exploit them. They know how to use words to destroy you. Use that opportunity when they say something negative to you or they do something to provoke you. Use it to improve yourself. Work on your patience. Work on handling yourself with grace. When someone says something to you with malicious intent. Always also keep in mind that they act like that because they've been abused and neglected, and they don't know any better. When you keep this in mind, it will help you deal with it better. Picture them as an adult with the mind of a child. They have an adult body with the mind of a child because in reality they are. They are emotionally stunted from the age of when they were abused. Another thing that I battled with is good and evil, the concept of that. And despite what you might think, they're not evil, even if they seem like it. And thinking in that way makes you no different from them in the sense of how they see the world in terms of being all good or all bad. Now, I know there are a lot of you that may be codependent and you have this deep compassion for them. But just because you do have that compassion and empathy for them, does that mean you should be around them? If you identify someone with a cluster B personality, limit yourself away from them as much as you can by going low contact, or if you have to, go no contact. If you have to be around them, practice the gray rock method. Be as boring as possible. You don't notice gray rocks because they're everywhere, right? Okay, so the next video that I make, I'm gonna make maybe 2 more videos on this, and I'm gonna do more on the spiritual aspect of it and why, what is the purpose of narcissist, and how, you know, you can see sometimes negative entities will use narcissist as a host. They will channel through them if you're a light worker. And then I'll also maybe make a video on why you attract them in the first place and learning how to set boundaries. So I will go ahead, I will link some channels below that have definitely helped me and have taught me so much about NPD. And I'm also going to link some articles that have also helped me. Again, this is more of a comprehensive guide. Think of it like that. So you're still going to have to do the work, you're still going to do the research, you're still going to have to put in the hours. Okay, I hope that this really helped you. Thank you if you watched till the end. Thank you for watching my video. And let me know what you think in the comments, if you want to share anything.